You were never really a child, not fully, not in the way other children seem to be. You worried about things children aren't supposed to worry about. You understood the atmosphere of a room before you had words for it. You took care of people who were supposed to take care of you. And somewhere along the way, without anyone deciding it, without any single moment you can point to, childhood ended before it was supposed to. If this is you, you didn't grow up too fast because you were mature. You grew up too fast because you had to. Psychologists have a specific term for this: parentification. It describes the process by which a child takes on the emotional or practical responsibilities of an adult, not because they chose to, but because the adults around them couldn't or didn't carry those responsibilities themselves. But parentification is just one form of premature growing up. The broader pattern has a name too: childhood emotional neglect. Not necessarily a dramatic absence of love, but a consistent gap between what a child needed emotionally and what was actually available. The child who grew up too fast didn't receive less love in most cases. They received love that was conditional on their maturity, on their ability to manage, to not need too much, to be, in some essential way, older than they were. Here's the most common form. The child who grows up too fast is often the child who learned to read the emotional weather of the adults around them and to manage it, not because they were asked to, because they had no choice. When a parent is depressed, anxious, volatile, or simply overwhelmed, the child feels it, and the child, whose brain is wired for attachment and survival, begins to adapt. They make themselves useful. They become the source of comfort. They learn not to add to the burden. They suppress their own needs because the adult's needs are always more present, always more urgent. Psychologists call this the parentified child, and research consistently shows that children who take on this role carry its effects long into adulthood. They become adults who instinctively manage other people's emotions, who feel responsible for the mood of the room, who find it almost impossible to have needs of their own without guilt, because they learned very early that their job was to take care, not to be taken care of. Here's the unexpected one. Childhood is supposed to be a space of inconsistency, of changing your mind, of needing things and then not needing them, of being afraid and silly and unreasonable and loud and then quiet and then loud again. Children who grow up too fast lose access to that inconsistency because in the environments they grew up in, inconsistency was dangerous. An unpredictable child in an already unstable home creates more instability. A needy child, when a parent is already overwhelmed, creates more pressure, so the child became consistent, reliable, easy. They learned to present a stable, manageable version of themselves and to keep the rest hidden. Psychologist Diana Baumrind's research on childhood development shows that the freedom to be emotionally inconsistent, to have needs that change, to feel things without immediately regulating them, is essential to the development of emotional intelligence. Children who are forced into premature consistency don't develop that intelligence in the normal way. They develop something else, a remarkable ability to manage others, and a significant difficulty managing themselves. Here's the biological layer. A child who is responsible for the emotional stability of the adults around them is a child whose nervous system is always on, always scanning, always preparing, always managing the gap between what is happening and what might happen. This is not a metaphor. It is physiological. Research on children in high responsibility, low support environments shows measurably elevated baseline cortisol, the stress hormone, even in the absence of obvious crisis. The nervous system adapts to chronic low-level vigilance the same way it adapts to chronic pain, by treating it as the normal state. The adult who grew up too fast often has no memory of feeling genuinely safe and unresponsible, not because nothing was ever safe, but because the nervous system was never given permission to stop watching. And a nervous system that never learned to rest doesn't know how. So, here's what we know about people who grew up too fast. They became extraordinary at reading people, at managing situations, at being needed and showing up. These are real skills. They were earned through real experience, but they came at a cost that is rarely named. The cost of a childhood that was spent in service of everyone else's stability. The cost of never having been fully, irresponsibly, inconsistently young. And here is the unexpected truth about grief. You can grieve a childhood you don't have clear memories of losing. You can mourn the version of yourself that never got to be careless, never got to be the one who needed things, never got to be held together by someone else. That grief is real. It is valid. And psychologists who work with adults who grew up too fast consistently find that the moment someone names it, not as a complaint, not as blame, but simply as a loss, something releases. Something that has been held for a very long time. You grew up too fast, not because you were exceptional. You grew up too fast because you were needed, and you responded, as children always do, with everything you had. The maturity you showed then was real. The capability was real. The care you gave was real, but so was the cost. And you are allowed, now at whatever age you are reading this, to acknowledge that something was taken from you. Not in anger, not to assign blame, but in the quiet, honest recognition that the child you were deserved more space, more inconsistency, more need, more time. If this video describes something you've carried a long time, share it with someone who needs to hear it named. And subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the behaviors, the patterns, the things about being human that nobody explains.